Hello and welcome to the Propelling Business Excellence podcast. Today I'm very excited. I have Rick Jordan, who is the founder of ReachOut Technology. Is that correct, Rick?
What's shaking? That is absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining here. And I'm very excited that you have a very different combination of things like technology and then media and podcasts. This is completely unheard of. And I was looking at your website. That was also very different than a regular technology company. So tell us more about your business. And thank you very much again for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here for real. I love doing this. And I like to think this. On my show, I had an episode a little while back that it was titled "You're Not That Special," and it was talking about really the problems that you're facing. Everybody thinks that they're unique and nobody would understand. Yeah, but in
Mhm.
that episode, I was talking about, well, of course, you're one out of 7 billion people, 8 billion people in the whole world. I'm
Yes.
sure there's some people that have gone through the same stuff you're going through right now. But to your point, like the media company and all this other stuff, it's like everybody knows Gary Vaynerchuk, and he has a wine company. That's how he started out, right? He was even on the Tonight Show a while back talking about his
Mhm.
wine company a few years ago. But yet he also has VaynerMedia.
Right.
Media is something that is absolutely integral and needs to be content production needs to be involved, I think, in any business these days. Because that's how the consumer shops. First thing they do, they even use Instagram or even more so TikTok instead of Google. TikTok is used for the news these days, right? They'll search things up. It's like, you know, uh, Kamala Harris, Saturday Night Live, and they'll find the clips there about her being on Saturday Night Live. I say that because we're recording this on election day, right? It's a good reference point, but
Yeah,
everybody should
absolutely.
have content production as a way to be able to connect with their customers.
Mhm.
And if you're in business, you have customers, period.
Right. And who are your customers for this Reach Out Technology company?
For ReachOut Technology, it spans anywhere from 5 to 5,000 employees. We even get into government bodies. I was actually in the White House 4 years ago as well, consulting for an AI company, selling for the AI border control bill that was shelved after the new administration took over. That was upsetting because it had a lot to do with fighting human trafficking. I'll
Mhm.
just put it out there. Hopefully here in a couple of months we have more of a priority put on that again because I think we really
Mm.
need to protect the kids of this world.
Yeah,
Trafficking is just it's ridiculous. It's stupid.
right.
It really gets me going too. Uh, but our customers in cybersecurity are that demographic: professional services, law firms, accounting firms, healthcare facilities, uh, government bodies, as I said. Really anything across the board because cybersecurity applies to everybody. It is absolutely B2B right now. At some point, we'll have something released to consumers, but that's in our plans in the future.
Okay. And what do you do as part of your company? Like, what does your company do?
What does my company do? Well, it's a cybersecurity company. We provide the services to customers in order to allow them to be in a position that is as secure as possible. So in our industry, we look at something called attack vectors, and
Mm-hmm.
that just means areas that something can come in and do some harm.
Okay.
So we try to protect against all of those. So whether it's through email, whether it's through somebody hacking in over the internet, all
I
these
see.
different vectors, whether it's through trying to social engineer people through a
Mm.
chat or gain passwords from somebody who will always click on any BS email that comes in and think it's from Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
There's always somebody that will click on anything in any company. So imparting that knowledge, which is a big part of it too, which is security awareness training, which by the
Mm-hmm.
way, security awareness training has become a mandate for a lot of underwriters for insurance policies now, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
general liability or cyber liability. They're mandating that employees of the businesses that are gaining these insurance policies
Right.
have security awareness training. And again, this is full circle to your question before. Security awareness training is content. It's media.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so everything comes back to that. It's that we are living in a very media rich world, no matter what industry you work in.
Mm-hmm. And Rick, do you have a software that protects the computers and servers and emails, etc., or is this how is the process? I know I'm just getting a little
Yeah,
bit more
we
curious of
we
details
use
here.
existing software. We don't make our own software. So the best
Okay.
analogy I like to use is we're sort of like the carpenters. So but we base things on outcomes. So whereas a carpenter would be like, hey, we're going to replace all your cabinets, and the idea is that they're going to look really nice and they're not going to fall off the walls.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't ever ask your carpenter, right, or your contractor, hey, do you have DeWalt tools or are you using a Milwaukee drill?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. But when you want the nice looking cabinets that are going to stay on the wall forever and not fall down while you're cooking dinner, it doesn't matter what tools the carpenter's using. You just don't
Yeah,
care about that. So
unless
for
they're
us,
like me.
yeah, yeah, which is possible, right? So that's good. I mean, that's a skill set that I'm sure you employ in what you do too. It's a curiosity that you have. I love curiosity. But when it comes to cybersecurity, it's like nobody really cares if we're using CrowdStrike, which was in the news recently for the big global outage that they caused, from a
Right.
malfunction in their software. Or,
Yes.
we use a competitor to theirs called Sentinel One, who has never had that kind of issue, by the way.
Mm,
And that's one of the tools in our toolbox is
I
Sentinel
see.
One.
Okay, so
We
you have multiple tools that you can use.
exactly, because Sentinel
Got it.
One will only cover one of those attack vectors.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We need to use a different tool, it might be a hammer rather than the drill to do
Mm-hmm.
something else. It's a very similar concept, and I think that's why I like that using that analogy.
Okay.
You're not gonna use a hammer to drive in a screw because it's got serrated edges on it. You need to screw it in, it's a different story. And you're not going to use the end of a screwdriver to bang in a nail. Well, some people do, I guess, but it's not the right tool for the job.
They might be like me.
Yeah. This'll work.
No, I don't do anything with that.
Yeah,
That's just
for
not
sure.
not my thing.
Yeah. So we put these programs in place, to ensure an outcome and we
Okay.
sell outcomes when it comes to
That's amazing.
cybersecurity.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess you were mentioning about when did you start your business and what inspired you to start your business?
Yeah, the business was formed in 2010, and prior to that, there was 3 years where I was independent, just myself, a solopreneur, if you wanna call it that, and that was 2007. I started the business. Everybody likes to ask me, "Well, why'd you chose to do that?" At that time, it's because my twins were born and I was laid off. Yeah, I was working for Best Buy at the time. I was actually the first Geek Squad agent in Chicago back in 2003. Then I wrote the sales playbook for Best Buy for Business, and then they completely eliminated that division in 2007. So I was jobless when my twins were born.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that,
Yeah.
honestly. And but you're at a very different place. Otherwise, you would not be here, right?
Oh, for
That's
sure. I mean,
yeah.
at that point, well, you don't have a choice, in those moments. And
Hmm.
this is the thing. It's like, how do you define success or the likelihood of success? And we talked a little bit about this before prioritization. Like when you're laid off and now your family of two, when you have yourself and your partner, and now you just doubled the size of your family to four,
Yeah.
overnight, and you don't have any income. Your biggest priority is to make sure that your family survives and that you can provide for them.
Right.
So it's a forced priority almost, but
Hmm.
if we examine that, geez, we could go down a rabbit hole with this. Is it really a forced priority? Because look at how many people are on welfare across the United States. Look at how many people decide to take, handouts from places, rather than doing something about it. And they're
Hmm.
like, oh, well, you've got the edge. And they, no, I graduated high school. I went to college for 2 weeks. I don't have higher education. It's just that I'm not stupid with my priorities, which I
Hmm.
think a lot of people are. For whatever reason, it's like, but when you have the choice to decide what your priorities are, that's the real power. You can go so far when they're mandated of you, but when you actually choose what your priorities are, that's when you start to be able to create any kind of life you want. And it's
Right.
only up to you.
Right. That's amazing. So, tell us a little bit more about, the misconceptions. I know you're talking about it to some extent, but what are some misconceptions about running a business?
Oh, geez. I was talking about this a little while ago. 15 years ago, everybody thought starting a business was hard, especially like where I was at. It's like, oh, why are you starting a business? Your twins were born. Shouldn't you go find a job that you
Hmm.
can have some reliable income?
Right.
I mean, that's like, well, you would think that way, but that's the safe way of thinking.
Hmm.
What's going to benefit me? What's going to give me the best possible outlook for my family? And even more so, what's going to give the best possible growth mechanism for me personally?
Hmm.
Because if I'm growing, then my family gets to ride the coattails.
Right.
It's like I'm setting the stage.
Right.
So a while back, same thing. It's like, oh, that's too hard. You shouldn't do that. You should rely on steady income. You should go get a job. So everybody 15 years ago thought that it was a really, really hard thing. The difference today is that everybody thinks that starting a business is a really, really easy thing. This is what I see. That's the contrast. Oh, I can just go post on Instagram. I can go be a TikTok star. I can start a business tomorrow. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I hate that freaking word because I think a serial entrepreneur really means that you don't have focus in any specific area, you know? Because you should be more like I'm going to use what I have to build on everything previously, and that's what I've done.
Right.
Because you can build something to a certain point to where you can allow somebody else to kind of take the reins of that with you still managing that, not starting 20 different things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're giving no priority, no focus, no energy to that any of them deserve.
Yeah.
So they think today it's easy. Well, I could start a business tomorrow. Sure, you could, but you won't be successful the next day. You won't
Right.
go live on Instagram and have 100,000 people watching today. You won't start a
That takes
podcast like
time.
I did 6 years ago and be top 2% in the world tomorrow.
Right.
It takes
Take a hard work.
consistency,
Right.
consistency of effort and priority.
Yep. So you have so much going on. I guess how do you maintain your work-life balance?
Yeah, I think work-life balance is stupid. I think it's the most ridiculous phrase that's ever existed, and it's because you don't have a time clock that you punch. Even if you're working in an organization, if you're not an entrepreneur, that's awesome.
Right.
Go for it. I love entrepreneurs. I have tons of them that work for me. They're so dedicated to the company succeeding, and they're great at their role. They love their focus points. It's incredible to see them. But for work-life balance, even for them, it's like, no, that's not it. You don't come to work and you're one person, then go home and you're a completely different person.
Right.
It's called like multiple personality disorder. Seriously, because you should not be different people. And
Right.
life is symbiotic. Work and life, it's like, what do you have? Do you have two different lives? No, you don't. You should incorporate all this because what happens at home is actually, and very much so, going to affect your work. What
Right.
happens at work is very much going to affect how you act and behave at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's a symbiotic relationship, and ways to
Right.
be able to blend those together are what you have to focus on, not ways to separate them.
Do you take any breaks at all?
No, I take I love that. Actually, I very much do. It's one thing
It
I
doesn't
really
look
love.
like it. It
I
seems
know,
like you're
right? I
constantly
go,
working.
I do. It's funny because so many people around me, like especially on my own team, when there's a new person that starts, because I have my office, my executive office, and they work a lot on my personal brand too. So if I'm speaking at an event or something like that, it's like go, go, go all day, and they've only been there for 3 weeks, a month, or something like that. They're like, man, Rick just doesn't stop or whatever. But then they see me and I come off stage and then I'll sit for like 30 minutes. They're like, you're sitting? Like, well, yeah, I'm sitting. I need a quick break. I need to regroup a little bit. Or at night, one thing that I do because my mind is going all the time, and that's because seriously, I love what I do. I love always trying to come up with new and better ways to do things and more ways to have fun with what I do as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
things that get monotonous, I get that way to where it's just not fun anymore. And here's a key point in life too. Instead of trying to change what you're doing, try to figure out ways to have fun with what you're already doing.
Right.
Yeah, there's ways to do that. That's why I took my company public. No joke. I got sick and tired of the IT industry. I'm like, this is boring now. I got bored. Everything was the same thing. The
Yeah.
company was successful in its own right. I was living comfortably. I'm like, all right, I need to feed my curiosity. How do
Right.
I have fun with what I've already built now? Now
Right.
that I've got it to this point. And that's why I'm like, cool, we're going to grow. We're going to expand. We're going to explore new ways that nobody else has before. That may not be your method of doing it, finding new things that nobody's ever done before. It is for me, but there's ways that you can inject fun. There's ways that you can learn to love things that you are, to switch things up a little bit in what you're already doing. And so there's a lot that you can do to experience life to really the fullest that it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seems like your future, is it already a public company or you're planning to
It
make
is.
it?
Yep. Yeah.
It's already a
Just under
public
a year
company.
ago. Yep. We reverse merged
Okay.
and listed on OTC.
Okay. And then we were talking about the future plans. Tell us a little bit more about what do you think about future plans and
Yeah, you're laughing because we talked. Everybody who hears the laughs, the chuckles ahead of time. We talked a little bit about this beforehand. And the way I explain this is that I don't like doing those things, because timelines to me are ways to kind of embed procrastination. You can have certain things that you want to accomplish, absolutely. And I think you should. Like I said, I'm gonna take my company public, but I really didn't set a timeline on that. And
You
if
just did
anybody
it.
would press me, exactly, I'd be like, well, maybe 3 years. And then we did our Reg A, our first Regulation A, which is selling public shares to people from a private company. So it's like sectioning off of your company to take part of your company public. We did that within about a year and a half, and then listed about a year after that. Excuse me. So everything went quicker than what I had actually anticipated. But I'll tell you this, nothing is quick enough for investors. It never is to get that done. It's always, well, that's great. It's awesome that you accomplished that. Now just do it faster. That's the mantra of investors all the
Right.
time. Yeah, so it's like, future plans, I have things I want to see accomplished. I have things that I want to see them come to pass. But it's like, what's the priority for me right now? So there's no way I could ever say, what are my plans in 5 years? I know that there are things that are priorities for me right now. Some might take 2 years, some might take 2 weeks, depending on the priority level that I want to place on them.
Okay. So forget about the timeline part. What is the future direction in your
Yeah,
language?
the future direction is absolutely. We intend to completely uplist to NASDAQ, a senior exchange. And that's the next stage of evolution of the company. I know
Nice.
that's the direction that we're going. I know that we're going to, and I have to be careful what I say here because we are a public company. There is some really cool things that we're working on, in the cybersecurity space. I want to say them, but it's really cool things that we're working on, and when the time is right. I intend that time to be right shortly is when we'll actually announce those things, because it's
Okay.
some cool things. And one of the pillars of why I took the company public, because it's three things. It's cybersecurity for all, trying to bring accessibility to cybersecurity services for all businesses. The second is generating wealth for everybody that's involved. That's everybody. That's investors, that's shareholders, that's employees, that's customers, all of that, because we're protecting data or providing financial growth, any way you look at it. And the third is raising the bar in our industry. That one that I said that I'm working on, that's raising the bar in our industry,
Hmm.
to bring things that really have not yet existed yet or have been attempted but abandoned.
And what obstacles do you anticipate with these type of future directions?
Yeah, the obstacle right now with these types of growth companies is capital and access to capital. 'Cause I mean, we've got great partners, we have great shareholders, we have great investors that are interested in this stuff. It's phenomenal to see that all that money exists out there. It's just that institutional lenders, especially in the way the economy is, and we'll see how that goes with whoever is president next.
Hmm.
Yeah, it depends on how the institutional side goes, but the private lenders, the private investors, there's so much money that exists there. The issue is this gap in between to deal flow, which is where my company exists. We don't know where these private investors and private lenders are, and they don't know where the deals are at, the companies to invest into. So if you can figure out a magic way to build this, registry or deal flow between private lenders, private investors, and good, solid companies, that would be phenomenal.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, I think we have some ideas that we can talk offline. There are some connections we
Oh,
can make there
great.
and
That's
see.
phenomenal. Yeah. I
Yeah,
see the
may
gap.
not be
That's not
useful,
my
but
problem to solve. It's
what's
not
that?
it's not my problem to solve for the world. It's just my problem
Yeah,
to solve. That one's a problem to solve for myself.
right. Yeah, whatever we can do some
Yep.
introductions in, so we'll figure
And
it
then when
out.
I learn it, then I'll teach everybody else. Hey, that works.
I mean, yeah, it may not be solvable for
Yeah.
everyone, but there are some introductions we can probably make. So,
Sweet.
yeah. I'm sorry, you were saying something?
I just said sweet. I think
Oh, sweet. Okay,
that's great.
that's great. And I guess in this constantly evolving business landscape, we were asking about, the changes necessary for companies to grow. What is it that you're doing in your company that you changed, and how are you
Yeah.
adaptable and staying
It,
open to innovation?
if things that get too comfortable, if things aren't changing and and you just sit back, you're like, man, I love this. I got a great business and I can just sit back on all these things. One, it probably won't be that way for a while,
Hmm.
because the business could still be there and be awesome, but at some point, customers move on, all of that. So there always has to be things that you're doing to be a little bit uncomfortable. So if there's something, always look, if you're comfortable, look for something to change. And whether that's an improvement in one area or like me, what I recently asked with our operations team, out of all the tools that we use and everything, the question was, what if we started over? What if this was 15 years ago and we just started from scratch? What would that actually look like? It causes you to think about things in a very different way rather than
Right.
taking what you have and then building on top of it. Because I think sometimes you're trying to just compensate for some of the inefficiencies in other areas by bringing in a band-aid in a completely different area of the company.
Right.
And those things can tend to compound until it's too late at some point.
Right.
So if things look good and they work well and you're like, "Oh, this is awesome," ask that question. If I were to start over tomorrow, how would I build this thing?
Hmm.
Where would I start from? Because you've got different knowledge and different resources available to you today than what, at least in my case, what I did 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it if we were to start from scratch.
Yep, yep.
Um, Hey, one thing I loved about you, we were talking about, you are pretty efficient, but you have a different way of explaining things. You
Oh,
mentioned
efficient.
about writing a book in three-quarter of the book in a day or so, something like
I
that.
did, yeah, it was over a weekend, it was over 3 days. I just got into a creative flow, and it's, efficiency, I think, is something where you're taking something that you're already doing and you're able to do it better, versus people think that efficiency is, "Oh my gosh, look at how much you can accomplish," and it's like, maybe, but it's a prioritization and a focus
Hmm.
issue that I see with most individuals, to where it's like they wanna get stuff done, but so many other things tend to distract them, and you have to make sure that it's a consistent priority, a consistent focus. So if it's something that's important to you, you're going to get it done, and I think I used the example before of something like, you leave your 12-year-old home for the first time. Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, this is great." You're like, "It's 11 o'clock. I'm gonna be back in 3 hours at 2 p.m." And of course, 12-year-olds can tell time just fine. But they're partying all over the house, uh, playing, so much PlayStation that you just couldn't even believe, like 3 hours straight, they get sucked into this, but the one thing you told them as a parent was, "By the time I get home, I just need the dishes put away."
Right.
Something that takes probably 5 minutes, you
Hmm.
know, that they could have done at any point, but all of a sudden they hear the garage opening up if it's a house or the key turning in the lock as mom or dad is walking in, they're like,
Now,
"Crap."
do it.
Yeah, and then all they're scrambling to try to put the dishes away,
Right.
So I wouldn't call that, they probably got it done, right, in that quick time, but that's, you look at it, it's like, was that efficient? Because they did it so fast, right?
Hmm.
Whereas efficiency is generally related to speed, but no, it wasn't a priority. They could have had that done way before, not had the stress. So it's like human beings will always do what's important to them at that time.
And what is
And
that driven by?
what's that driven by? Oh my gosh. Now we're going to get into deep psychological stuff here because it's
I don't know
some
much
of it's
about it,
forced.
but
Yeah, some of it's forced on you, some of it's not. Because if we talk about the inability to change as an example, right? It just means that changing is not a priority for you. If it's a business like we talked about, building the thing from scratch, what would I do if I had to build this thing from scratch? You know, you can ask the question, but if you're like, "Meh, I'm gonna go do other things," it's not a priority for you. When it could be the most life-changing thing that your business could ever experience if you actually entertained that and started going down that road. But
hmm.
it's okay, because everybody has these choices. Or if it's like, you know what? This relationship that I'm in, it's comfortable. It doesn't really fulfill me. But then you ask the question, it's like, well, what would it look like if I made a change? But
Right.
then the deeper question is, who do I need to become in order to make that change? And that's where it gets scary for a lot of people because that's where it requires real work, because now it becomes thinking about things differently. It means prioritizing things a
Right.
lot differently in your life. Your business is the same way. What are you going to prioritize? Are you going to prioritize being comfortable and having things blow up in your face someday because you were apathetic? Or are you
Hmm.
going to prioritize actually examining things on a daily basis, saying, like, what could I change?
Yeah. And I think where I was going with that also is that your values probably determine your
They so much do. Absolutely.
priorities
Yep.
and the
Yep.
focus.
Right on.
That's why, I mean, people like you who are so driven, they don't need timelines, but then there are other people. I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah.
It's very
We went
different
there.
for you.
That's on the
So
bonus content. There you
yeah,
go.
bonus content. Okay, sounds good. The last question that we have here is, what advice do you have for the aspiring entrepreneurs or the ones who are struggling with their business?
Oh, just get after it. Come on. Because it's most people know what they need to do, even if it's just the first step, and this is where fast action always beats perfect execution. Because perfect execution will very much delay things for you. Because I see people get stuck in this thing all the time about, oh, I need to know all the steps. Like, well, the problem is, and this is the fallacy, it's like it's a misconception. You won't even know all the steps you have to take until you take that first step.
Right,
Because as soon as you take that first step, you have changed the landscape of everything. Now you're in a completely new state, somewhere
right,
you've never been before. How
right.
could you possibly predict what's going to happen when you step into somewhere you've never been before?
Yeah. I love what you said, Rick. Fast action always beats the perfect planning. Is that what you said?
Yep, you got it. Or
Ex-
perfect
wow,
execution. Yep, right
perfect
on.
execution. Yeah, that's amazing because that's where we see a lot of challenges too. People don't want to take the action.
I feel you. And there's a lot
Yeah,
of reasons for that. And it kind of comes back to that. Who do I need to become in order to do
yeah,
that? And people get hung up in that. Well, yeah, I don't even think you really know that. You
yeah,
just have to figure out how you need to take that first step.
right. So Rick, we forgot to mention about, how much have you grown your company from the beginning till now?
Ooh, well, the beginning was, geez, something like $100 the first month, something like that, right?
Okay, you at
And then
least made 100
to
bucks.
yeah, to multiple $1 million public company 15 years later, from one employee to just under 100. It's been a cool ride, and I don't intend to stop here either. It's there's more to do, and that's just because there's fun that I can have still. If it stops being fun and somebody else wants to take over the fun, then sure, at that point, then I'll go on. But you just know, and that's one thing I've seen and experience. You get to a point to where it's like something needs to change, and whether it's the stuff around me needs to change, I need to change the stuff around me, or I need to change me. Something needs to change.
Hmm. That's great that you're not afraid of change.
It's the
Change
catalyst for
requires,
all of life's
yeah,
fulfillment. Yeah.
change requires a lot of courage. Um, so what's your dream? I guess final goal for your company?
Oh, I don't even have a final goal for the company. I just
No?
know the next steps. That's it. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's more related to purpose, and if I can accomplish those three pillars of cybersecurity for all, wealth for everybody involved, and setting the bar or raising the bar in the industry, then that works for me.
Okay. Sounds great.
Yeah.
There anything else you want to add, Rick, here?
Oh, I can add a lot, but we'd be going for about the next hour or so.
Yeah, thank you
That
very
was the
much,
first.
Rick.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, I
Yep.
really appreciate your time here. This was a lot of fun. So we'll connect offline on other things, but
Sounds good.
really, thanks so much for all your time. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate your time
You
taking
bet.
time.
You're awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.